I did a one-day course in basket making about 12 years ago and came home absolutely obsessed with it. I did, I suppose, the equivalent of an apprenticeship after that, learning how to do all sorts of basketry with a really wide variety of materials. But the willow for me made much more sense because it's native. It just feels very real. I grow organically 20 different varieties, so I don't use any pesticides. I visit it probably every couple of weeks and walk through just to check that it's all happy and healthy. The first year's growth is quite side branchy and not particularly usable, but then from the second year onwards I've been cutting the most beautiful huge bundles of willow. I spent so much time thinking on that willow bed. Maybe in a way, as I'm measuring up the willow, I'm measuring up my life in a way. When I first made a willow basket, that very first evening I went to bed and was dreaming of these strokes of the willow. It reminded me of how I feel when I swim, which is the same kind of movement, so it's a really lovely fluid feeling. I really feel that deeply in my body, and I feel a very strong connection between swimming and basket making. They give me the same kind of satisfaction, and I have a need for both of them. I have a need to use the willow, I have a need to make, like I have a need to swim. That's also a big part of my life. My ideas I store in my sketch box, which is a variety of things I've made and scraps I've found, knots, things I've picked up off the floor, bits of old telephone wire folded into a corn dolly shape. So it's a kind of storage place, I feel, for my ideas. And I find when I make new pieces, I realise afterwards, oh, maybe that's where it came from. It came from my sketch box. So I feel like there's plenty of future projects stored in there. When I first started making, I actually started making very large pieces of work, and after a little while I realised I didn't really know how to make them well. I didn't understand the tension, so I spent 5 years learning how to make baskets. I'll be learning all my life. It's not a thing that you can learn really quickly. I like seeing the whole process through from the beginning right to the end. So from planting the rod in the ground to harvesting, drying that willow, bundling it, sorting it, counting each rod out for a basket, soaking it for the number of days. The actual process of weaving the basket is a small part of the bigger picture. I think that's a piece of information that's missing when you look at the basket at the end. People often ask me, how long does it take to weave a basket? And I say, I may have woven it in a day, but actually the process is much, much longer than that. I like to work in a really physical way, so that's what's really attractive about basketry. I like to use my whole body. I like to be down on the floor with my knee on the work and my foot on the work. I use hoops as I work to contain the basket and to allow the basket to grow into a certain diameter. So when I'm allowing it to be wider, I use a big hoop around the stakes, and when I want to pull it in, I put a smaller hoop over them, which brings and carries them in. I suppose when I'm making multiples of something, I want them to be as similar as possible. Because of the nature of the materials, they never arrive at exactly the same place, but they come to a fairly uniform finish. I really enjoy using coppiced wood, having heavier structural elements. I have worked with a trug maker who's made hoops of trugs to make trays, which gives a really beautiful, distinct edge of sweet chestnut against the willow. I really hope that the pieces that people buy from me become functional, well used, like someone's friend, that they fill up with apples or potatoes. They put their bread on the tray, on their table every day. I'd like to see the objects really handled and worn. I'd like to see them get dirty, have crumbs in them, you know, they're robust things. And yeah, I want to see them get used. I have some nice solitude, I suppose, when I'm making, which I enjoy. I like the space when I've put in a set of weavers and they're all moving really easily. It feels just really lovely, really gentle, really smooth. I like that smooth running of it.